for trials.
Stakeholders in the pharmaceutical industry are pleased with this development, as it will not only reposition NAFDAC to be at par with other international regulatory agencies, but Nigeria as a whole.
It's going to benefit not only the pharmaceutical industry in Nigeria, but mankind. The issue is that every day new ailments, new diseases come up. And therefore, there will always be need for research, for new products, new medicines to take care of them. Also, old medicines get tired in fighting diseases. Therefore, there will always be new medicines to improve on the way we have been fighting diseases. Yes, the pharmaceutical industry is very much in support of good clinical trial practices. There have been clinical trials in Nigeria even before independence, but we found out that the technique and the technology is still backward. So there is need to bring it to international standard, such that we don't have to travel out of Nigeria to go and look for experts to do clinical trial in Nigeria. We all remember the recent case that happened between Trovan and Pfizer. Such things should not be allowed to repeat itself in Nigeria.
The resource persons at the workshop stressed the need for Nigeria to develop this enterprise, which is not just a viable venture, but will boost our economy.
For a country like Nigeria, obviously you know that there is no research to truly understand the cure for a lot of diseases in this country. The Western world, who have the capacity to do clinical trials, focus on their own disease issues. Nigeria needs to get involved in clinical trials so that we can also focus on the disease areas that affect Nigeria. Two, by having capacity for clinical trials, we're going to attract business from international sponsors of clinical trials, pharmaceutical companies, and that will create employment here. That will also provide foreign revenue to this country and help us build capacity in this country, in our healthcare infrastructure, in our capacity for research, and in general science knowledge economy.
If we begin to develop our clinical trial infrastructure and participate in international clinical trial process, then whatever we produce indigenously within the country will not only be limited to be marketed within Nigeria, but outside of Nigeria.
Well, the whole idea of clinical trials is really to take advantage of a number of resources that Nigeria has. We have very large population of people. We have well-trained clinicians. We have the facilities, or we could build, we have the capability of building the facilities. And so if we end up participating, it's a way of participating in the global R&D culture. It gets our young people, clinicians and scientists, part of the global research and development community. They get to have state-of-the-art equipment. They get to be able to identify and discover great therapies.
Although the clinical trial enterprise has a lot of potential, there are limitations that have to be addressed to ensure its success in Nigeria.
There are lots of challenges. I think what should be understood is that it takes four levels of components to have clinical trials. One is the patients themselves who have to be tested. That's one component. The second one is the regulatory framework to ensure that everything is done according to standard practice. Thirdly is the group called the Ethics Review Board. These are the individuals who take into consideration that the subjects for the study are well informed of what they're participating in, so that they have the ability to withdraw if they don't want to, and thereby fulfilling the global standards that are required. And lastly is the sponsors. Sponsors is the name for the manufacturers of the drugs that are being tested. So you need all four of those components, and if they are not adequately, the capacity is not there for each of them to function well, then you don't have good clinical trials.
There are challenges. There are challenges with everything. There are challenges, and Nigeria has some additional unique challenges, because there are some challenges even in our basic infrastructure. we have the added challenge, looking at clinical trials in isolation without fixing many of the infrastructural challenges would be a little bit narrow-minded and may have a lower benefit than what we'd eventually want.
One of the key challenges is because these are new compounds. They are not known. You cannot really predict how they will react, whether they are going to succeed or not. You might dose the early volunteers and see that this drug has a little side effect. You might dose the early volunteers and see that this drug does not have the efficacy. Efficacy is its capacity to cure the disease. So companies spend huge amount of money on research, and a lot of times some of these compounds fail, which means that they do not qualify to be finally approved for for marketing in the open market of pharmaceuticals.
Also, its regulation by NAFDAC is not without challenges.
Some of these investigators, they'll end up amending their protocol, changing some things on the protocol without